Hey guys, welcome to another video for the upcoming Magic the Gathering set, Battlebond. Today is May 23rd, 2018. We've got a whole bunch of cards to get into, so let's just jump right in with our first set of cards. And we are looking at the partner cards that were released today. Looks like we've got Sylvia Brightspear. It's a legendary creature, human knight, 2/2 for 1 white, 2 generic at rare. She partners with Koroth, the Bright Flame, and then she has double strike. And then she grants dragons your team controls double strike. So any dragons you have and any dragons your teammates have, or teammate rather, has double strike, so that's fantastic. Then we've got Koroth, the Bright Flame, which is the partner for Sylvia, is a legendary dragon at rare, 3/4 for 6 mana. That's 5 generic and 1 red. It has flying and haste, and then knights your team controls have flying and haste. So the Dragon Rider grants double strike to the dragons, and the dragons grant haste and flying to the knights. So it's a nice little package you got there. The Bright Spear, 2/2 for 3 with double strike is decent on its own. The flying hasty dragon on turn 6, it's a little pricey. Obviously it has to have flying. Doesn't necessarily have to have the haste part of it to maybe chop down 1 mana on that thing, but still, the partner mechanic is fantastic because when you play Sylvia, you're getting Koroth, in a few turns later. So a fine rare. It's going to win games for sure. Next up, we've got Charkham Slinger and Charkham Receiver. The Slinger costs 5 mana, 1 red, 4 generic for a 2/4. You can pay 1 red, tap it, and the Slinger deals 2 damage to target player or planeswalker. So it does not deal damage to creatures, just players and planeswalkers. The Retriever, on the other hand, whenever you cast a spell during your turn, untap target creature. So there's a nice little synergy there, especially in Simic colors, where you're going to be hopefully casting a lot of spells. The only downside to this is in limited formats, in sealed and two-headed giant, the more spells in your deck, the less likely you're looking to have a board presence, which impacts your game negatively. But there is something to be said about the 2 damage, to a planeswalker having a shock on a stick here. If you've got enough low enough spells, casting off spells that you can trigger this twice or even 3 times in a turn, then not too shabby. Now the other thing that would be beneficial is assist spells in this matter. So it looks like there might be an assist type of deck. We'll look at that a little bit further next week when we kind of dive into our players or into our pre-release guide. But having that extra mana that your partner has to untap this thing and potentially tap it 2 or 3 times in a turn with those assist cards would definitely help out tremendously. So a good set of cards, not the best, but still 2 4s, not too shabby. Moving on, we've got our next set of partner cards. We've got Ley Weaver and Lore Weaver. They are both 2/2s for 4 mana. The Ley Weaver is 1 green, 4 generic, and the Lore Weaver is 3 generic and 1 blue. Let's see here. The Ley Weaver, the green one, is tap, untap 2 target lands. And the Lore Weaver, the blue one, is pay 5 generic and 2 blue, target player draws 2 cards. These really aren't that good. Paying 7 mana to draw 2 cards is a little on the pricey side, even if the Ley Weaver is trimming that down by 2. Obviously, because you can tap the Ley Weaver, to untap 2 of the tapped mana that the Lore Weaver just tapped for mana. So at the end of the day, paying 5 mana to draw 2 cards is still a little pricey, especially on a creature. So it is what it is. I mean, they're 2/2s at uncommon. You can't really ask for much at uncommon level. So moving on, we got our colored spells. We're going into black. We've got Narcana Reverent. That's 4 generic and 2 black for a 4/4 Vampire Shade at Mythic Rare. Whenever you tap a swamp for mana and an additional swamp. You get additional black mana essentially, and then let's see here. You can pay 1 black mana, and you can give her +1/+1 until end of turn. So not too hateful. So you get a double up on your swamps. Unfortunately, the dual lands in this set are not named lands, so those won't count as swamps. So at this point, I believe the only land in this limited format is going to be basic swamps. But that might be some interaction for later, for older formats. You never know. Inner Demon is next. It's 2 generic, 2 black for an aura enchant creature. Enchant creature gets +2/+2, has flying, and is a demon in addition to its other types. And when Inner Demon enters the battlefield, all non-demon creatures get -2/-2 until end of turn. So this is an interesting card, only because it's got removal inside of itself, so you're giving your creature +2/+2 and evasion. The demon, creature type really doesn't matter too much outside of its own card. So you can put this in, your black warriors deck, or really, in any type of deck that has black in it, even though it doesn't have demons, and still be okay. Obviously you're gonna take a hit from it on your non-demon cards, but being able to catch them off guard while pumping your guy up, maybe getting a few of those little flyers out of the way, so that your Inner Demon enchanted creature can now attack in. It's a pretty good card at uncommon, not too shabby. Gang Up is next. It is X and 1 black assist, so you can have other players help you pay the X cost. So destroy target creature with the power of X or less. So, not too shabby. Don't think your opponents are going to help you with that in Two-Headed Giant, so you got to look to your teammate for that one for sure. Moving on to red, we've got Lava Field Overlord. It's 7 generic, 2 red for a dragon. It's a 5/4. It has assist, so you can any player can help you pay the 7 colorless cost for the spell. It has flying, and when it enters the battlefield, it deals 4 damage to target creature and opponent controls. So, it's not that bad. The assist cost on this is just a little high. You are getting 4 damage immediately on a creature, so you're going to take down like their 4, possibly their 5 drop. In this case, it could be their 8 drop. At the end of the day, it's a 5/4 flyer that your opponent, your teammate can help you cast. So you might be able to get this down as early as turn so it's 9 mana, so you can get this down as early as turn 5 if everything goes correctly, and that's the only thing that your team wants to cast. Turn 5 you might be able to drop their whatever they played on turn 5 or turn 4. So not a bad card, but it's definitely the top end of your curve. Stadium Vendors is 4 mana, so it's 3 generic, 1 red for a 3/3. When it enters the battlefield, choose a player. That player adds 2 mana of any one color that they choose. So kind of like a pseudo assist almost. You get, if you're, it's a 3/3 for 4, so that's, it's below the curve. But if you're on turn 4 and your opponent has something that they want to play for 6 mana, this gives them that extra bump while you're still affecting the board somehow with a chump blocker, whether that is blocking their 1, 2, or 3 drop. You never know. So Cheering Fanatic is next. It's a 2/2 for 1 red and 1 colorless. Whenever it's a goblin and whenever it attacks, choose a card name. Spells with the chosen name cost 1 less to cast. So again, cost reduction is a thing. 2/2 for 2 in red is fantastic. This is a great way, after second main phase after combat to be able to drop in, an extra creature because it costs 1 less on turn 3. So getting a 4 drop out on turn 3, not a bad sign. The downside is you of course have to attack with the Fanatic here, so chances are on turn 2 or turn 3 rather, if your opponent has something to block with it, your Fanatic's probably going to die, so you're only going to get 1 activation. If you can get 2 or more activations out of this, or maybe you can if you can somehow augment the Fanatic to have flying or bump up its defense a little bit so that you can get an extra extra cast out of it, that would definitely be worth it. But at the end of the day, a 2/2 for 2 isn't the worst thing possible. At the very least, you're going to get one activation out of it. So, and it doesn't necessarily have to be on turn 3 either. So like you can play this on turn 2, and then on turn 4 you can attack with it. Just keep in mind, if you do play it on turn 2 and do not attack with it on turn 3, then it's that's one extra turn that it's on the battlefield for removal and things like that. So just keep that in mind. It seems to be a lot of sorcery removal speed, removal at sorcery speed. So just be cautious of that. So last up for our red, we've got Corvus Fury. It's one red, 4 generic for a sorcery. At the rare level, it says, for each player, choose friend or foe. Each friend discards all cards from hand, then draws that many cards +1. So not too bad. And then Caravas Fury deals damage to each foe equal to the number of cards in their hand. So it's kind of fun. It's a big splashy red card that lets you refill your hand, especially if you've got dead cards in your hand or whatever, or if you've got no cards in your hand, you'll draw 1 card and your opponents will lose life. So not too bad. If you can get 3 damage to each opponent, that would definitely be worth it. 6 damage to your opponent plus drawing 2 cards at the minimum. Not too bad. Not too bad at all. Next up, we've got a couple counter spells in blue. We've got a reprint with Spell Snare at 1 blue, instant counter target spell with a converted mana cost of 2. Not 2 or less, exactly 2. So this is a really fun card to play with. It got up to about $5 or $6 at one point in time, so the reprint wasn't necessary, but it's a lot of fun to play with. In my modern decks, I use it constantly, but it's a lot of fun to kind of slow down those early game aggro decks and the decks that try to curve out every game. So Out of Bounds is our next counter spell. It's 3 generic, 1 blue, instant. It's got assist, counter target spell. So having that extra mana up with your partner. Being able to kind of work in this type of counterspell is it's a good way to catch your opponent off guard. Fumble is next. This is probably my favorite card today, just because we haven't really seen anything quite like this before. So Fumble is one blue and 1 colorless, instant, uncommon. Return target creature to its owner's hand. Gain control of all auras and equipment that were attached to it. Then attach them to another creature. Doesn't say another creature they control. It's definitely gain control of all of that stuff. So for 2 mana, you are taking all of their enchantments and all of their equipment right there. So yeah, it seems to be like a pretty fun card. To kind of punish those that play those equipments and those aura spells at pre-releases. Two-Headed Giant is usually notorious for that type of play, just because there's so many different things to protect creatures. Like you've got 2 people to protect 1 person's creature. So, this is this card will come in handy for sure in those pre-release Two-Headed Giant events. So definitely looking forward to playing with that card. Next up, we've got our last blue card. It is a rare human wizard. It's called Spell Seeker. It's 1/1 for 1 blue and 2 generic. When she enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an instant or sorcery card with a converted mana cost 2 or less. Reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle your library. If your bomb rare is in blue or is in one of your colors, and you have this, you'll play it. Just be cautious that it's got to be 2 or less, obviously. It's really not going to be the greatest card out there. I think this is more of a constructed card than anything, searching up combo pieces and things like that in like older formats. But at the end of the day, being able to, if you got a really nice 2-drop, Shock is in this set, so being able to tutor up Shock, just paying 3 for it just seems a little expensive. So, if you've got a good 2-drop spell that you can pick up, this is definitely worth it. But other than that, you'll just skip over it. Moving on to white, we've got Together Forever, 2 white enchantment at rare. When Together Forever enters the battlefield, support 2, so you get to put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. So that's 2 separate creatures, not one creature getting 2 counters. And then its activated ability is 1 colorless. Choose choose target creature with a counter on it. When that creature dies this turn, return that card to its owner's hand. So it's a nice little bump in power and toughness for one of your creatures. It's kind of like a insurance policy for your heavy hitters. White is really good with flyers, so extra damage on attacks with your flyers is always a good thing, and taking out a life insurance policy for them is equally as good. So normally I would say don't play enchantments. This one isn't so bad. If you can get back at least one of your creatures, then you're looking good. If you can get an extra 2 points or 3 points of damage in on the attacks, then that's even better. Just have to leave up that at least 1 extra mana to keep your creatures alive. So at the end of the day, it's probably worth it for sure. Angelic Chorus is next. It's 3 generic and 2 blue. It's another enchantment at rare. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain life equal to its toughness. This isn't too bad. In limited, life gain is not always the best course of action. The other thing you need to think about here is with a 5-drop, you're looking at playing this at the top end of your deck. How many more creatures, unless you have some massive card draw, how many more creatures are you going to play to benefit from this? Now, keep in mind, it is also when the creature enters the battlefield under your control, so it's not your partner's control, but under your control. So flashing abilities and things like that usually come with blue and sometimes white, do play in effect with this. So it doesn't have anything to do with casting. So if you've got a way to flicker things, that could be a thing. So it's a decent way to gain life. You just have to be aware of, do I have ways to draw cards, and what am I playing after turn 5? So let's see here. Jubilant Mascot is next. It is 1 white, 2 generic for a 1/1. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may pay 3 colorless and 1 white. If you do, support 2. This is an excellent way to sink your mana into your creatures. You don't have to attack with the mascot, which is great, because that's how you would be spending your turn 4, is attacking with a 1/1, paying 4, and then giving something +1/+1, or giving 2 things +1/+1. So that's definitely not worth it, taking 2 turns off to do this. But this isn't going to be a turn 3. I don't believe this is going to be a turn 3 play. I think this is going to be more of like a turn 5 or turn 6 play. And then on the attacks, the turn after, you're going to be activating it, one time and boosting up your team that way. So those 1 and 2 drops that you play that are no longer useful on turn 4, turn 5, turn 6, now they can kind of become relevant, over the rest of the game. So yeah, this isn't a bomb for by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a great way to sink your mana late game to make those early game cards that go out of stock immediately after your opponent plays something that's higher than a 2/2 or 3/3. You can build those up over time. The other cool thing about this card is if you've got like a flyer and you get a couple extra points of damage in, that's a great way to kind of end the game a little bit quicker as well. So definitely, if you get it, you're going to play 2 or 3 of them. That would be probably enough right there. Next up, we've got Reprint Core Spirit Dancer. It's a 1 generic, 1 white Core Wizard at rare. It's an 0/2. She gets +2/+2 for each aura attached to her. Whenever you cast an aura spell, you may draw a card. So it's kind of a nice little engine there. You get a card, hopefully it's an aura. And the one bad thing about this is it wants you to play auras. And just as we talked about in blue with Fumble, you can be punished pretty hardcore for playing auras. But this, if you open this, you're probably going to put 2 or 3 decent auras in your deck. a 2/2 or a 0/2, excuse me, for 2 mana is really not that strong. But if you can get, even 1 or 2 on there, you're looking pretty good at 2 mana. So, and the card draw ability is fantastic. So if you get it, you're going to play it. Make sure that you have at least 2, maybe 3 decent auras. This might cause you to play some of your garbage ones. But at the end of the day, if you can get this up to a 2/4 or maybe even a 4/6, then you're in perfect shape. And then hopefully one of those auras gives her flying. We'll see. Sky Streamer is next. 5 mana. It's 1 white, 4 generic for a 3/2. It has assist. It's flying. And when it enters the battlefield, you gain 4 life. Not too hateful. The cost is pretty steep. The 2 defense is rough, just because it's within shock range, and there's a couple other spells that give -1/-1 or -2/-2. So it's within that striking distance. I think you'd be better suited to play an aura and a cheaper creature that has 2, maybe 3 defense. With it. Again, the high note is it's got assist. And it's got flying. So those are 2. Assist is I haven't really kind of assessed assist yet, because it could be a very powerful any way to make things seem any way cheaper. And I know assist isn't cheaper, but how many times do you play 2-headed giant and you play something and your opponent has nothing to play or doesn't use all their mana or whatever? So it's still yet to be determined if this assist is going to be kind of broken. We'll see. We will see. Next up, we've got green. We've got Magus of the Candelabra. I believe this is a reprint. This is a 1/2 for 1 green. It's a human wizard at rare. You can tap X, tap him, and then you get to untap X lands. So this is kind of an interesting card. There's a few combos in there with lands that produce multiple mana. So that's where this comes into play. It also is ability lands are another big thing where you can activate those ability lands over and over again. Obviously you need to tap the Magus, but at the end of the day, getting multiple activations a turn is always a great ability on a card like this. So in limited, you probably won't play it unless you've got something to do with that mana, or if you have an ability land to do something with it. So we'll see. Let's see here. Gorthrama is the all-devouring is next. It's a legendary worm at Mythic. It costs 5. That's 3 generic and 2 green for a 10/8. So it says other creatures have, quote, whenever this creature attacks, you may have it fight Gorthrama the Devouring, which is fantastic. So of course the creatures that are attacking get to choose whether or not they're attacking, the worm or not. And then whenever the Gorthrama leaves the battlefield, each player draws cards equal to the amount of damage dealt to Gorthrama this turn by sources they controlled. So you can kind of like kamikaze the worm to draw cards. Your opponents can do the same, things like that. It's kind of a catch-22. You want to be on the lookout for that. So that's definitely an interesting card. I'm kind of curious to see how it plays. So yeah, and it's the nice thing is it's damage dealt by sources this turn. So it's not necessarily combat damage. It's just regular damage. So if you send a shock towards this thing and then somehow the worm leaves play, right? So if it gets bounced or if it dies or whatever, you get to draw those cards. So it's not just combat damage. Bramble Sovereign is next. 2 generic, 2 green for a 4/4 mythic rare dryad. This is another really cool card that's going to be a lot of fun to play with in 2-headed giant. When another non-token creature enters the battlefield, you may pay 2 mana, 1 green, 1 generic. If you do, that creature's controller creates a token that's a copy of that creature. Lots of fun. First off, a 4/4 is nothing to sneeze at. This is, that's a decent rate in of itself. If you get one activation, or if you're, if your opponent gets an activation of it, obviously you have to pay the 2 mana, and not your opponent, excuse me, your partner. If your partner plays a creature, you have to play the mana, not your partner. You do. So, obviously you're probably not going to activate this on any of your opponent's turns unless it's something that benefits you. You never know. It might be worth it. You never know. There's a couple cards in there that let people draw. Everybody draws a card. Everybody scries. So you can kind of, there's some use case scenarios, corner case scenarios there. But at the end of the day, you're really going to be doing this on your creatures and your partner's creatures. Lots of fun. So getting a couple of these worms wouldn't be too bad. Next up, probably one of my favorite removal spells back a few years ago. Beast Within is in green. It's 1 green, 2 generic for an instant at uncommon. Destroy a target permanent. Its controller creates a 3/3 green beast creature token. So destroy land, destroy artifact, removes any permanent. That's including planeswalkers. And their controller gets a 3/3 green beast. So, as long as you've got a way to deal with that 3/3 beast, you're in the clear. Getting rid of a planeswalker is a huge trade-off. Getting rid of their bomb rare, a flyer, something with evasion, something with a repeat effect that's, causing you trouble. Giving them a 3/3 is worlds better than any of that stuff. So, I believe this next one is an actual reprint from a long time ago. The artwork seems very, very familiar from back when I first started playing Magic. Skyshroud Claim is next. 3 generic, 1 green, sorcery. At the common level, you get to search your library for up to 2 forest cards and put them onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. So pay 4, get 2 back that turn because they're not tapped. So yeah, it's not that bad. Play this on turn 4. And that ramps you into turn 5, possibly 7 lands if you've got the land drop for turn 5, or maybe you drop this on turn 5, and you play something that has for 3 mana, and then you're ramping the next turn. So you never know. Could be fun. Could definitely do some damage in green and in red for that matter. Let's see here. Next up, we've got our last 2 cards of the day. We got our gold card of the day. It's the last one standing. 1 generic, 1 black, 1 red for a sorcery at rare. Choose a creature at random, then destroy the rest. So, pretty funny card. The choosing at random is going to be interesting to see how people do this. Make sure that when your opponent does this, that the randomization is in fact randomized. But it could be a lot of fun. Sentinel Tower is next. It's an artifact at rare. It's 4 mana. Whenever an instant or sorcery spell is cast during your turn, Sentinel Tower deals to any target. Excuse me. Let's start that over. Whenever an instant or sorcery spell is cast during your turn, Sentinel Tower deals damage to any target equal to 1 plus the number of instant and sorcery spells cast before that spell this turn. Wow, that's a mouthful. So, instants and sorceries during your turn, whenever you cast them, the first one's going to deal 1 damage. The second instant or sorcery you cast that turn is going to deal 3 damage, right? 1 plus, so 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, in that fashion. So, oh, actually, no, I lied. It's actually before that spell this turn. So it's even more confusing. So the first spell is going to deal 1 damage. The second spell is going to deal 2 damage, and so on in that fashion. It's 1 plus the number of instants or sorcery spells that before that spell this turn. So yeah. So the first one's dealing 1, second one's dealing 2, and so on in that fashion. Again, this kind of goes in that Izzet deck. If you've got enough sorceries and instants to play, and you open this up, there's a possibility that you can build a deck around it. But again, you're going to lose. The more instants of sorcery you have, the less creatures and ways to affect the board that you have. And the best way to affect that board is by putting creatures on it. Now, keep in mind, this allows you to deal damage to any target, so you can target a creature, you can target a planeswalker, you can target a player, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the same one each time. So if you've got, this down, and you've got mana to play or to play spells, you can take care of quite a few things, especially if, like, for instance, like, let's say you're casting Last One Standing. that would be a way to, get rid of a lot of spells, deal some extra points of damage, and kind of run the circuit that way. So, definitely a big splashy card for Commander, that's for sure. Alright guys, that's our video for today. Really do appreciate you watching. Make sure you leave a comment, get subscribed to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/72DPI online. We really do appreciate it. We've got a whole bunch of videos coming out this week as far as preview season goes, so keep an eye on the page there. And then the week before our pre-release, we'll have our player's guide, so a whole bunch of best ofs, worst ofs, removal, creatures, what kind of spells you should look for, things like that, just to kind of help your pre-release go a little bit more smoothly, hopefully win you a few extra packs and things like that. And you can also remember to watch our Magic the Gathering podcast called Mana Drain that goes live every Monday evening on our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/72DPI online. Pretty easy to remember. And yeah, we really do appreciate you guys watching, and we will see you guys tomorrow.